Morning, y'all. This is Cody. Cody's Bait and Tackle, Warsaw, Missouri. Going to give a little bit of a fishing report here this week. I haven't talked to anybody at all this week. Haven't hardly seen any other boats out on the water. Pretty much the only boats I've seen was catfishing boats. Several of them was guides. Not a lot of people out this week, even with the pretty decent weather we had. It's been pretty quiet around here. Fishing's been real good. Crappie fishing, all the guys crappie fishing are just hammering them. Looks like some of the deeper brush piles off the bluffs are holding a lot of fish I've seen. I have done a lot of graphing this week. One day I ran pretty well the whole north side of the lake. Little T-bow, big T-bow. Little T-bow was kind of odd. I didn't see near the fish up there that's normally up there. Wasn't much for catfish up there. As far as crappie, I didn't get real tight into the bluff there, but there was a few people crappie fishing that bluff. I'd say that's catching fish. They're there every winter. That's always a good wintertime spot, but it gets hit hard. As far as the shad that's normally up there, normally there's just massive balls of shad. They wasn't there this year. Not like normal. There was some, but not a ton. You get closer down towards the state park and stuff, all of them brush piles was loaded on that lower grand. The bluffs, some of them trees off them bluffs was just loaded. Ran up around T6. Looked like most of them trees was holding some fish. The creek mouths on Big T-bow was just loaded with crappie. I went by one bluff and, I mean, you couldn't even tell what was there. There were so many fish. They was hooked right up on some brush right off of one of the straight up and down bluffs there by one of the creek mouths. It looked like they was anywhere from 8 foot down to 15, 20 foot down. I mean, it was some of the biggest schools of crappie I've seen in a long time. I thought last winter I seen some big schools, but this winter I think they're even bigger. I think them 2019 crappie have grown a little bit. They look bigger on the graph and just kind of making it look like there's a lot more fish there. Most of them fish that I'm seeing caught now are keepable fish. They're over 9 inches. So that's a plus. You know, last year most of them fish was 8.5, 8 3/4 inches. Now it looks like they're 9.5 to 10. Talked to a few of the crappie guides and they're saying pretty much the same thing. A lot of them are 9 1/4 to 10 inches. So that's a plus. As far as the upper ends of the lake, I have not heard anything at all on crappie. I have not been up there. Sparrowfoot, bucksaw up. I have not been on any of that. Haven't been on the upper Osage. They should be in the creek mouths. Various depths, I would say. I've seen one of the crappie guides say that most of his come off the flats. I'm guessing the flats back in the creeks, but I'm not 100% sure. In about 10 foot of water, anywhere from 2 to 8 foot down. So that would be a good start point. As far as catfish, them catfish are starting to school up pretty good. There's a ton of bait out there in places. You got to kind of find a bait that has fish feeding underneath it, and that's what you want to fish. There's a ton of catfish suspended right now because of all the bait. You kind of got to find them fish that's on the bottom with the bait. I've heard the upper ends of the lake's pretty good. The lower end of the lake, mid-lake, is good. That day I ran Big T-bow. It took me a while to find fish up there. They wasn't in their normal winter places at all. I spent 2 hours that day looking for fish before I finally found a good bite, and then we hammered them. We caught a bunch of slot fish, bigger slot fish. We didn't have any overs, but we ended up keeping 22 really good, really good under the slot fish. I ended up finding them right in the river channel almost all the way up to Windsor Crossing. That river channel up through there, if you could find a bait, it was loaded with fish. Out on the flats, there was a few scattered catfish out roaming with the little schools of bait. Wasn't a whole lot. Not like I'm used to seeing this time of year. Kind of seemed like that lower grand, all the fish might have pulled down there. Maybe the winds we've been having or something, they just pulled down a little bit quicker than normal. Not quite sure. That state park area, though, it was just absolutely loaded with bait, and there was a lot of catfish out there suspended in that big water. If you like to run jugs, it'd be a perfect time to do it. I mean, set them deep, and you would probably tear them fish up. I didn't look a whole lot on that lower Osage this week. I did fish Osage a little bit. They was in their normal winter places on the lower, what I did fish. Little palmy, big palmy, they're kind of scattered out, roaming with the bait. I caught fish everywhere I set up this week. I never set up one time and didn't catch fish. The biggest thing I'm going to say right now to give y'all some advice, I've watched boats do it all week long, watched boats do it the last 2 weeks, really. When you guys set up on a group of catfish, you're going to catch several fish pretty quick. And then they're going to taper off. Now, you might catch 2 or 3 fish some days. You might catch... My first set yesterday, I caught 17 or 8... Well, we caught 17 keepers and 2 or 3 slot fish. Then it started to taper off. As soon as I get that taper off, I'll give it 10 or 15 more minutes, and I'm moving. You can sit there in that spot and steadily catch a few fish all day, but that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a few fish. I've watched other guides do this week, last week, on other parts of the lake. As soon as that bite tapers off, get that boat untied and move. If it ain't working, it ain't working. I mean, if you're not catching numbers, find them. I'll give a spot, actually twice this week. I set up first thing in the morning. Yesterday was one of them. I said, we're fixing to move, and it wasn't. I said, we're going to give it another 5 or 10 minutes. And it was a couple minutes we caught a fish. So I gave it just a little bit longer, and it wasn't long, and we had 5 fish on at one time. And one of them was a bit bigger over. It was probably 25, 26 pound fish. It just kind of depends. I'll set up in a spot and I'll give it 30 minutes. That's kind of my rule. If you know it's a slow bite that day, you can sit there. If you're catching fish here and there, it's all right. If it's a slow bite everywhere, if you think there's a good bite somewhere that's going to be better numbers, bounce around and look for it. I mean, it's the time of year you should not have a slow bite at all from now until the time we get a shad kill. If you think the day is going slow for you, you need to move around the lake. I've jumped arms of the lake and had it be a night and day difference. A lot of the time, this time of year, I'm either on Big Tebow, the Upper Grand, Lower Osage. I don't fish the Upper Osage a lot until later in the winter. I do fish Little Tebow some, Little Palmy some, Big Palmy some. I just kind of bounce all over the place. I like fishing different stuff. I like finding where the best bite is in the lake. And you might be on a real good bite for 4 or 5 days in one spot. Go back the next day and it's just cold. Then you can run 5 or 6 miles up the lake and get on a different arm of the lake and it'll be on fire. I see that all the time. Yesterday, my bite died off where I was at. I set up a couple other spots. The wind was really brutal. We was getting bites, but by the time we would see the bite, the wind would shift the boat enough the fish would let go of it. We was just having some problems with the wind there, so we left. I graphed around a little bit, found a few fish I set up on, didn't have bait with them, so I was kind of skeptical of them fish being real active. We set up a bunch of little bites, which is common if it looks like they're not really feeding hard. We caught a couple of fish there. I said, let's go on ahead and wind up, move. We moved. I found some fish and some bait. Most of them was suspended. There was a few on the bottom. We set up about 5 or 10 minutes. We didn't get a bite, and then all of a sudden we caught 5 or 6 fish real quick. And then it just kind of tapered back off. And that's the way it kind of goes. That bait moves down to the bottom, then fish will move down to the bottom and feed a little bit, and then they'll come back up with the bait. They don't necessarily stay on the bottom if you graph them on the bottom. So that's another reason why a lot of them spots on the main lake where you got that deeper water will go cold on you. Even though you might graph a couple hundred fish in a spot, which right now I'm seeing some schools like that. Them fish will be there. That bait might move off and your fish moved. Or that bait might come up and suspend and your fish come up and suspended and your bait's sitting on the bottom where there's not much activity. There will be a few of the fish go down there. That's why you'll catch a few here and there. But just move. Pull out, graph. A lot of times this week and last week, I didn't move. I moved just outside of where I was casting previously. I cast quite a ways with my rods. I like a big spread. Even when I'm fishing in the trees, I cast way further than what I probably should and get hung up a lot, but that's one reason why I catch so many fish. I'm probably casting some of my rods out 50, 60 yards on the sides just to cover more water. I'm fishing some narrower spots. I wouldn't really say fishing some river channels, fishing some drop-offs that the fish are in a narrow zone, I should say. So I'm trying to fan my rods down that zone. And it does make a difference. Sometimes if you throw out just a little bit too far, there's no fish there. Or if you're too far up on the ledge, there ain't no fish. So if you kind of fan your rods right down it, you'll do a lot better. And it's just kind of trial and error on that most of the time. If it's working, if you know there's active fish there, just kind of keep messing with it until you get some action. That's really about the main thing I got to say for this week. I've watched that the last 2-3 weeks. Just every day I'm watching these catfish boats tie up in one spot, sit there, and they'll catch some fish, and then they just keep sitting there. I mean, even after they quit catching fish, they'll sit there an hour or two without hardly anything. You don't want to do that. I mean, yeah, sometimes the bite slows down throughout the day, but you can almost always set up in another spot and find a few active fish, even if the bite shut off for the day. That's the main thing. As far as shad, I've caught all my shad really deep this week. I don't think I've caught any shad at all in under 35 foot of water this week. Now, the day I fished Tebow, I might have caught some in that 30-foot range, but they was hugged right down on the bottom. And I had to look around for big shad quite a bit up there. I did find 2 good areas that had some big shad in them. Really over there around the state park, them shad are deep, but there's a ton of them all up and down that bluff, all the way from, I guess it'd be point 1 there back to the mouth of the state park cove. It's just solid bait up and down through there. But like I said, they're deep. You got to have a deep hole net to catch them. That's really about all I got for this week. I did catch some white bass in my net down deep with them shad this week. Caught some crappie down deep with them shad on the main lake. They're just scattered all over, it looks like. I did see, I was down around Osage Bluff, and I got off of a couple of them tree rows there, and I seen a lot of bigger crappie scattered out roaming in the bait. I seen that yesterday. I was actually wishing I had a crappie rod instead of a catfishing rod for once. It looked like some pretty good fish. Might have been some white bass mixed in with them, but they look like some dandy fish. As out a ways from the trees, there was a bunch of small shad kind of scattered out they was feeding on, and it looked like it would have been pretty good. Even with it being windy, I think you could have sat there and caught a good mess of nice crappie. That's about all I got for you guys this week. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Thank you.